All right, everyone, it is 2 o'clock on the dot on my computer, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Welcome to today's webinar on groups. I'm seeing lots of familiar names, lots of new to me names, so welcome everyone. We're so glad to have such a big group today. With that being said, just a couple quick sort of housekeeping things at the beginning. If you've been to my webinars, you've heard this a million trillion times. It could probably do this for me. But please keep your microphones muted until it's time for questions, or if I ask questions and you have answers, that sort of thing. That'll just help us keep moving at a good pace because we have a lot to cover today. And it'll also reduce any background noise to make sure that everyone's audio is clear. We are recording this webinar and we work as fast as we can to get the recordings up. So those will be available in the OTL Virtual Resource Hub as well. There are slides. I'll have Cody, will you send out the link to those? I have the link to the slides that I'm using today. If you want to download a copy and make notes on them as we go, that is fine. And we'll also make sure you put your Access ID in the chat too, and I'll send out a PDF copy after this. Right, let's get ready to go. All right, so we're going to be talking about using groups online for engagement and community. So talking about groups here, I'm going to be focusing on the Canvas feature groups and group projects. More specifically, there are lots of different ways that you can use groups that aren't project specific, but I really wanted to focus in on that piece because that seems to be the most challenging. If you have questions about other types of group work, we would be glad to answer those as well. All right, so most of you have already put your name in the chat, I'm seeing, so that's great. I have a question for you though. What do the group projects for your course or courses typically look like? How many students? What are you asking your students to do? That sort of thing. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to go ahead and type in the chat and share that information with us, just so I can kind of be thinking about what your practices are as I'm going through this. If you want to unmute yourself and talk about what you do in your group projects, that is fine as well. Okay, so I'm seeing some different ways to use groups here. So I'm peer reviewing in groups, answering lecture questions, research questions. Yeah, 3 to 4 students, that's great. That's what research tells us kind of that sweet spot is. You want to be around 3 or 4 students in a group. Okay, great. Group presentations, absolutely. Okay. There's lots of different scenarios that I'm seeing here, different ways to use groups. Yeah, producing professional business memos. Exactly. Awesome. Okay, discussing questions related to assigned readings. Awesome. Thank you so much. If you have more ideas, go ahead and drop those in the chat. If you have questions, I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself or my colleague here. I'm Carly Wasowski. I'm an e-learning specialist in OTL. My colleague Cody Bailey-Crow is here, and he's taking care of the chat for us today. He can answer any questions, send along resources. So definitely put any questions that you have in the chat as we move along. All right, so I have a couple learning outcomes here. Like I said, we're going to be focusing on group work as in group projects, things that are a little bit longer term. A lot of what we'll talk about are things that you can transfer to shorter group activities in different ways. So I want you to be able to list strategies for designing effective group work. There's a lot of different strategies that you can use to make sure that these are successful and more enjoyable for students. I saw someone say they hated group work as a student. I am with you. I also really hated it, But now that I am on this sort of side where I'm looking at the research and seeing best practices, I'm sort of saying, oh, you know, that is why group projects weren't my favorite. You know, we weren't given the right type of guidance or whatever the case might have been at the time. I also want you to be able to create a group assignment in Canvas. I'm going to show you what groups look like for students, where they can find their groups, what the functionality of groups is in Canvas, and then focus on being able to create groups in different scenarios and attach that to an assignment. So we have a lot to get through today, as I said, and we're going to keep pushing along. So benefits of group work. There are a lot of benefits. You know, I know some of us might be skeptical, like, how are we going to make this work online? And I totally understand you there. I was in the same place when I started teaching online. There are lots of challenges to overcome, of course, but there are also lots of benefits. So, you know, developing higher level thinking, being able to communicate and self-manage, and even leadership skills. And we'll talk about making sure that your students have roles in their groups. Promotion of student-faculty interaction. I think that's a piece that is often missing, especially in online courses from the group project scheme. And it's really crucial that there's a way that they can contact you and that they can not work with you, but consult with you as needed. So we'll talk about that as well. So we know from our research as well that well-designed group work helps increase retention, self-esteem, and responsibility in students. So, you know, again, those self-management skills, and it really helps the students who are coming from underserved populations to have these really well-scaffolded group projects and really retain them. We also want to expose our students to a, you know, diverse range of perspectives on our field, and ways that they can approach problems. And so that is a really great benefit of group work as well. And then it also prepares them for quote unquote real life situations. I hate it when we talk about students not being in real life because they have real lives too, but thinking about their futures, of having those social situations and employment situations where they have to work closely with other people, even other people they won't agree with or that are, you know, difficult to work with. Figuring out those skills now is really going to benefit them in the future. So what is group work exactly? So when we're talking about group work and group projects specifically, we want to make sure that the task is complex enough that a student couldn't just sit down and do it by themselves really quickly and easily. There's some different strategies we'll talk about for making sure that that's the case, but there needs to be enough work for everyone to do. We want to focus on the interaction in group work, not just the product. I think a lot of times we get caught up in what is the product going to be, how is it going to turn out. But a big part of having these group projects is that learning to work in groups, that learning to work together, the building engagement with one another. So we want to make sure that that is also reflected in the way that we're thinking about our group projects, how we're structuring them, and how we're assessing them. Here are some key questions, and we're going to address these as we move forward. So as we're assigning projects, we want to make sure we're keeping our learning objectives or learning outcomes in mind, and how is being in a group going to further progress toward the goal of the project? How is that going to enrich the experience of doing the project? So we want to make sure we're really thinking about that. There may be some things that are not well suited to group projects and other things that really are well suited. Is there enough time in the course schedule to allow students to work effectively? I think especially if we're online or in these sort of hybrid environments, we want to make sure that we're giving students enough time. And one thing that you can sort of consider here is having students fill out a survey that gives you sort of their availability and trying to match them that way, or having students choose groups if they're in cohorts and they know one another, so that their schedules better align. So we hear that as a big sort of complaint from students, a pain point in group projects is having a really hard time scheduling time to work together. So we want to make sure that we're leaving enough time for those meetings, for those sessions where they can work together. That is probably going to be a little bit more time than you would give in a traditional face-to-face course. I wish there was a magic formula or a way to say this kind of project, you give them this much extra time. But that's definitely where you would want to get some feedback from your students as you go. Is this enough time? Are you needing more time? And trying to be sort of flexible with deadlines that way. What extra direction, support, and assessment criteria are you prepared to give? So a big part of having a well-structured online environment in general is making sure that you have really explicit instructions, that there are ways for students to get support. You're being really open about your assessment criteria. How are you going to be assessing their work as individuals and as a team? And that sort of moves on to this next piece of how will I grade individual and team performance? So hopefully we can address any questions that you might have about these questions as we move forward. Here's some tips for successful group projects based off those questions that I just asked. We want to keep our groups small, especially if they're working in longer term projects. Research says 3, 4, somewhere in there is ideal. If you look at the research, it ranges kind of from 2 to 6, but so that sweet spot is 3 to 4 students. This allows them to be able to, I guess, more easily schedule meetings, first of all, online. You know, it's much easier to get 3 people together than it is 6 or 10. You can also more easily break down the roles that students will have, so you don't have to come up with 10 distinct roles for your groups, or students don't have to think about 10 distinct roles that each group member can play. We want to provide opportunities for students to develop rapport with one another before they start the project. So we want to make sure that they are having times that they can sort of informally speak with one another, whether that's on whether that's in a synchronous way, whether that's in a discussion board, however you're having them meet with one another. And that can really be put on them too, to say, okay, here's your group, find a way that you can all communicate and get to know one another, but making sure you sort of also structure that into your course as well. I would suggest requiring a group work plan and a group contract as part of the group project. So breaking up the group project into pieces so that you are able to follow along how students are progressing with the group work. You're playing a somewhat active role in supporting them and letting them know that you're there if there are problems. So you want to have them plan for the deadlines. How are they going to reach the deadlines? Who's going to do the work? So what roles might you have? You might have someone who takes notes during meetings. You might have someone who structures the slides for the group presentation, whatever the case might be. You might want to consider having students switch those roles. So, week 1, this person gets these roles. Week 2, now we switch. So that we don't have certain students being pushed into, always being the note taker. I mean, we know from some of our research that women, particularly women of color, end up doing a lot of the writing and the scribe work in groups. So we want to make sure that we're trying to avoid that. We want all students to be working in different roles. Rachel, yes, I would suggest having students come up with a contract, or you can come up with some suggested language as well. I think I might have a resource on that toward the end, or at the end. If not, I'll make sure I add one in about creating contracts, but these would be kind of like the main pieces of a contract here. What is their communication plan? How are they going to communicate with one another? They might start a WhatsApp group or a text group, or whatever. I don't know, TikTok, no, but having them choose how are they going to communicate, when are they going to communicate, what are the things that they should be communicating. So we're helping them build a scaffold for effective group work and effective teamwork, really. So we also want them to come up with some ideas. What are they going to do if there are conflicts? And again, I think putting this on students is totally fair, having them think these things through. How are they going to mediate conflict? How are they going to make decisions? When do they contact you? How do they contact you? Thinking through that is also an important piece of when we hit a roadblock. You can even change this from conflict resolution to steps for overcoming barriers in your project. So when you hit a barrier, what are you going to do? And I think having students really explicitly think these things through and have a group work plan / contract they come up with together as part of the project is going to be really key to keeping that success. So another piece that you want to think about is grading individual and group performance. This is something I've seen suggested a lot of places. This link here at the bottom, the Cornell site, we also have that in the slides. Cody, can you send the slides link again, just in case folks didn't get it at the beginning? In general, the suggestion is that you would grade individual and group performance. That's why it's important to have students break down their, it's important to either give them roles or have them break down roles for their individual team members and make it very clear of who does what when, so that you're able to have students self-assess and then assess their groups, and then use that information to help you with your own grading. This gives students a better sense of agency, and a lot of that, having at least what I've seen suggested, and Cornell suggests this as well, I believe, is have a pretty hefty portion of the project be graded on that individual work too. That kind of takes away some of the panic. It also incentivizes that individual work, so that stops people from riding one another's coattails and just sort of signing on to the final product at the end. They have to be able to show that they have done something individually. Cody sent along these links in the chat too, but make sure you tilt your assignment. I don't have time to get deep into what tilt is or how it works. If you want to meet with an OTL consultant, we're all really glad to talk about tilt. But basically, you want to make sure your students know, what is the purpose of this group project? Why am I doing this group project? What are the skills and knowledge? So the task. So if we're creating a group presentation based on research, what skills do we have to have? The presenting skills, the research skills, things that we need to know how to do. And these should tie directly back to your learning outcomes. And then how are you going to be assessing me? I want to know that as a student too. So we have the Virtual Resources Hub and then the Tilt website both have really great resources that you can dive into and learn more about this. And we're, like I said, we're glad to help you work through tilting an assignment too. I also recommend checking in periodically with the groups. This can look like a short meeting. This can be having them submit something that's a summary of the work that they've done so far, whether that's individually or as a group, but having some type of moment where they stop, reflect on where they're going, and give you a little bit of feedback about how things are going. It's going to be really, really helpful to A, keep them on task, and B, help them come back to this conflict or barrier, whatever you want to call it, resolution, so that if there are problems that students are feeling nervous about voicing, you're giving them another place to do that. Before I move on, are there any questions about sort of these best practices, things to think about in designing group projects? You can feel free to unmute yourself or go ahead and put your question in the chat. A lot of you have done group projects as well. So is there anything that you would add here? What's sort of a go-to strategy that seems to work really well for you in your group work that you've been assigning? Yep, it's the Transparency in Learning and Teaching framework, Nadia. Cody has sent a couple resources along, and we'll also send along the PowerPoint that has information relating to TILT. Yeah, thank you. I think that's something I've seen in a lot of places, Stephanie, making sure that we're really putting the onus on students to come up with strategies, and we're there to sort of scaffold or support what they come up with. So I think that's really a useful way to help them think about not just, all right, what does our final project look like, but the process of getting there, because I think the process of getting to that final project is just as important. Oh, okay, Jade, I like that idea. Do you have a link to that reading at all? Because that sounds really interesting, to care front others. I like that. Rachel, so having them color code their contribution. We just want to make sure that we're careful about using color too much in case we have students who are colorblind. I've had that come up a couple times in classes and felt really embarrassed about not thinking about that. But yes, I've seen that as a strategy too, where you have them somehow code what they have done. If they're using a collaborative document or a PowerPoint online, they could leave comments even of this is my work or this is what I put together. Yes. Yep, Stephanie. So that can be a piece that you really have to scaffold too, is coming up with the timelines. Um, and I think having sort of built-in ideas of, this is a deadline that we have coming up. This is a deadline. I want to have your draft on this date. I want to have your report on how things are going on this date. That can help them a little bit, but also helping them think, okay, how much time is this going to need? Who needs to be doing it? So some of that work can be cumbersome. Is a little bit of extra scaffolding that you have to do, but I think that what you'll see in returns on the project of how much better the work is and how much more invested the students are really worth it. Oh, I like that. Having them record their part with their phone and listen to a complete self-eval, self-reflection of what was challenging and learned in the project. I love that, Sarah. That's a really great idea. Jade, thank you for this link. I'm going to go ahead and download this PDF myself. Sounds really interesting. Awesome. Thank you all. I always love doing webinars because I think I learn just as much from all of you, if not more sometimes. So thanks for those. Those are really great things to think about. I think it's a really good point that there are students don't know how to timeline projects. It's hard. So I'm definitely helping scaffold that way is good. There are some student resources that I include at the very end of this presentation as well, things that you can just send the link to your students as part of the project too. All right, we don't have any more questions here. I'm going to move over to Canvas and start poking around there and showing you all what these features look like. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start by showing you what the groups tab sort of looks like for students when they come into Canvas. So I'm on my front page here, or my dashboard. I have all of my different courses listed. And over here on the left, there's a groups button in this green global navigation tab all the way to the left. So when I click this, it's going to pop out and it's going to list all of the groups that I'm part of. I want to point this out because I think it's important that you give your group a really clear name. So if students are accessing their group from this, it's not really clear. I have group meeting 1. I'm not really sure what that means. I don't remember what course it's for. So if you're having them do a longer term project and you want them to be able to easily access it from here, that's something that we want to think about, is making sure it's a nice clear name that means something to you and to students. So as a student, I can click on this. You're going to see it's really empty because I'm not actually a student. I haven't worked on a project here before, but I'm listed as a student in this course. So this is what students see. I'm using the word students a lot, but here we are. So what they'll come into is home page. It looks like its own tiny Canvas course, basically. So over here on the left, there's announcements. They can create their own announcements, and that will send out to everyone else in the group of, hey, I have a question, or does everyone still have time to meet on Thursday? Here's my Zoom link. I am not sure if there's always a group tab or if there's just a group tab if you've been put into groups. That's a great question, Jenny. I am not sure. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for that one. I can look into that.
Carly, I'm going to check the Canvas guides right now and I'll post anything I find.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So Cody's on it. Over here, students can also create pages too. So if they want to start creating a page to gather resources, that's something that they can do. The People tab shows me who my group members are and who my teachers are. They can also start their own discussions. They can upload files and begin conferences, so using Big Blue Button here if they wanted to. What I also like is collaborations. They can come here. It automatically has it as Google Docs, but I would suggest to students to use Office 365 because it's already linked to their Wayne ID and they won't have to log in somewhere else or worry about, oh, was it my WSU ID or is it my Google login? But this is where they can create, if they wanted to do a PowerPoint together, they can give it a name, a description, and they can add people as co-authors or collaborators on here. So I think that's a really nice feature that Groups has. I would definitely recommend either walking students through this, or I'm sure that there are videos, and I can look for something related to that after this that sort of walk through what groups are for the students so they know what's really in here. So I think we can't assume that students know how to use Canvas or that it's always very clear. This can become a really great hub for students if they choose to use this forum. And a really great way for you to sort of keep tabs on their work because I believe you can check into their groups as well and see how things are going. Any questions about sort of the student view of groups? Nadia, I'm not sure what you mean. When can we ask students for groups? Can you explain a little bit?
Okay, yeah, Carly. Yeah, when is the best time to ask students to be part in a group at the beginning of the semester? When, I mean, they don't know exactly maybe what Canvas is, especially if they are first year student, or towards the middle of the semester, or
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Now I understand. I think it would depend on when you're it would depend on when your due date is for the group project or due dates are. I would definitely have them get into groups a little bit sooner, maybe not that first week because that can make it kind of overwhelming. But I think giving them chances to even do smaller tasks together can build that relationship. Even if it's smaller tasks that sort of lead, especially if it's smaller tasks that lead up to that bigger project that you want them doing, then I would suggest, keeping them together. They get used to one another. You can always use discussions for the whole course so they can speak with other people, but that'll really help build that rapport if they're able to have that sort of semester-long relationship with one another. So that would be my suggestion. Maybe a couple weeks into the semester, these are going to be your final project groups. Here's a first small assignment that you'll be doing together to get to know one another or something like that. So that would be my suggestion. It would really just depend on your purposes and when you're timing your group projects.
Yeah, and one more thing. Do you think that same groups in like usually the breakout rooms should they be the same students in the group projects, or it has to be like different groups so that they tend to know, I mean, the whole class more? What do you think?
Okay. Again, it would depend on what you're asking them to do. And yeah, so breakout rooms are a really great way to give them sort of face time with one another and let them talk to one another. I think that there's something to be said for switching groups. And then there's something to be said for keeping them in the same groups too. I think, again, it depends on what you're asking them to do. If they're doing a larger research presentation, but in your synchronous meeting, you're having them solve problems that aren't necessarily related, it might be good to have them talk to other people. But I think it's also good if you're assigning that group project and sort of getting that started, that you would put them into breakout rooms with one another. We also need to keep in mind that, again, we can't assume that all students will be able to make all of these synchronous sessions. So we want to make sure that there are also asynchronous ways for them to get to know one another. Okay. All right, now I'm going to show sort of from the instructor side how we create groups, how we put groups into assignments or discussions. Once you create a group, you can, anything that has a due date other than a quiz, you can set as a group assignment. So what I'm going to do is take us into a practice course here. So to be clear, there are two different places that you can create groups. I'm going to show you how to do this from the People tab, and then show you where that would happen in assignments and where you can assign the groups that we've created here to an assignment. So that hopefully that'll become clearer as we move forward. I know there's always a lot of jargon with Canvas and a lot of distracting language sometimes, so hopefully you can follow along. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to throw them in the chat. Cody will let me know if I need to stop and clarify anything. All right, so I'm in here. I'm an instructor in this course, and I want to go ahead and get some groups set up. So I'm going to click on my People tab. Here you see the roster of folks in the class. There's not many people who are assigned as students. So you can see there's already a couple of groups here. So this is where you'll see your whole class list. There's a group set for discussion week 1. So we have 3 people assigned to 1-1, and then 3 for discussion week 1, group 2. So this is something that's kind of confusing about Canvas language that I want to point out pretty explicitly. So groups are these individual pieces that students are in. Discussion week 1, group 1. A group set would then be this whole discussion week 1. It's a set of groups. It's confusing and it throws me off sometimes too, but I want to make sure that we're being really clear about that, because it's important over here on this right side, whether you're adding a group set or a group. So if I'm teaching this course, I'm ready to have my students go into their final project groups, for example. So I'm going to go ahead and click plus group set. Here's where you'll give it a name. This is where I was saying we want to be kind of clear. So I might say, I'm going to say it's an OTL course because I'm just going to make it generic. OTL 101 final project. So that's going to be my group set here. That's the name for all of the different groups. There's some different settings I want to point out. So you can allow students to sign up on their own. If they're online and they might not know each other, that might not be particularly helpful because they might not know who they're signing up to be with. If you're teaching a program that's a little more cohort based and they might know one another, that could be a good way to separate them. There's lots of different ways to separate students into groups, lots of different philosophies about it. I think what it really comes down to is what you feel comfortable with as an instructor, and what aligns best with the project that you're assigning and your own pedagogical philosophy. You can assign groups that are sort of quote unquote like mixed abilities, people who are more advanced in the course and people who are struggling a little bit. There's something to be said for putting students into groups with sort of like ability levels. I don't know if ability is the right word I want to be using here. It kind of feels icky, but that's something that you would want to sort of think about, and I can't give you like a clear defined answer on that. So you can allow self-sign up here. Something else that you can do is either choose to create groups manually. So this will allow you to drag students into groups, or you can split your students into groups and give the number. So I have 5 students. I'm gonna go ahead and split them into 2 groups. If you have multiple sections with a cross list on Canvas, then you'll want to make sure that you require your students to be in the same section, because you don't want them to be between sections, or you might not want them to be between sections and cause confusion that way. They might not be coming to the same live sessions or participating in the same discussion boards. So I would suggest, require them to be in the same section. So what this does is this splits students into a number of groups automatically. You don't have to do anything. And then leadership. So automatically assign a student group leader. That is something that you might want to use if you're having them work together to bring something back to you. So if, for example, this final project, if you want them coming back with a tangible product that they're bringing you at the end, it can be good to assign a group leader. But also, I think if you're having them do a group project together, letting them choose who the group leader is might be better. So not having it be set here in Canvas, letting them choose, okay, who's gonna lead this week, who's gonna lead next week, might be the better way to go. Any questions about here creating group sets? Karen, thank you for your comment. Yep. So if you're sorting them by ability, so past performance, it can help to make sure that there is a middle student in each group. This helps connect the high performers to the low performers. And yes, that's a really great idea. Yes, so having students in the same section is going to keep all of the students who've been, if you're doing any synchronous meetings, they're coming to those synchronous meetings together, I'm assuming. If you are, having discussions that are assigned to one section or the other, they're not going to see each other's names necessarily. So that's why I would require, and this only counts if you have cross-listed courses. So if you're teaching 4 sections of the same course, but you have them cross-listed in Canvas to look like one course for your purposes, then you would worry about this. I think if your course is cross-listed or not typically, because it's something that instructors have to do manually. Okay. I always have a hard time describing what cross-listing means, so I hope that was useful. Thanks, Louis. All right. So when I'm done with this, I'm going to click Save. So right now it's telling me it's randomly assigning my students. It's pretty quick because there weren't very many. And you can see that there are already students in each of these groups. If I was doing this manually, I'd have a list of these students over here. Is it going to let me unassign her? Yeah. So it would list my students over here to the left and tell me, oh, I have 5 unassigned students. And then I would just drag them into groups based on where I want them to be. If students are signing up on their own, they would all show up here, and as they choose their group, as they choose their group, they would be sorted into these different tabs. So when you create different groups and assign them, can students in the class see the other group's info? No. So they won't be able to access each other's group pages or group discussions or anything like that. It keeps them totally separate. If I decide, Langston Hughes is just not working really well with Nadia and Anne, or there's just some reason I think that, they should be moved, okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch out Kennedy and Langston for some reason. So that is really easy as well, where you can just drag and drop them to put them in groups based on your preferences or based on their preferences as well. So now we have our OTL 101 final project. All of my students are assigned. If I wanted to add a third group for some reason, I can do that. So if I have 4 more students sign up for the course, I can click add a group. And then this will I want to limit it to 3. And so it's going to have another group down here with that same, I gave it the same name as the others. And now I can put people into this group if I had more. Obviously, I don't want one person alone in the group. That's good to know, Karen. So email students when they're added to a group. So if you accidentally auto-assign them and then those groups get deleted, they might be confused by that email. Good to know. So make sure that you have your choice very carefully made at the beginning. There is some flexibility to change things, but it might let people know. So awesome. So I have my 3 groups here. We're going to pretend that Kennedy's not alone. I'm ready to set up my first group assignment. So I'm going to come here to assignments. I'm going to add an assignment. So up here on the right, plus assignment. So I want my first assignment to be a group contract and work plan. So I'm going to have, my purpose, and then the task. So the skills here being group organization, knowing how to structure a timeline, and then criteria for success. Those would depend on your learning outcomes, but it could be something like all students have roles for the duration of the project. Timeline is clearly laid out in a logical order, those types of things. You might also include some resources on group work. And like I said, there's some of them at the end of the slides that I have here. Cody sent out the link already, and I will make sure to send a PDF version out afterward. So my group contract and work plan, I have this nice long description here. We're going to pretend very clear about what we want them to do, right? Points, I'm going to say this is worth 15 points. That's just an example. I'm not giving any specific guidance on how many points this should be worth, because it really depends on the weighting in your course and the grades and how much this project is worth. If you have weighted grading, you can switch it between groups. Display, I always suggest just displaying the greatest points. I think that's the clearest for students. I want them to submit online. So I want them to submit So what you can do here is I want them to submit online, and I want their file uploads to be a .doc or a .docx. So that would, they have to submit a document to me. You can also do things like a website URL if you want them to send in a link to a shared document, that sort of thing. It just depends on what works best for you all. This is right here, so group assignment. This is where you click, this is a group assignment. You can also, it also gives you the option to assign grades to each student individually. Again, I highly recommend having individual and group considerations factor into your grades. Like I said previously, that boost students, their engagement in the projects, and the accountability, especially if you build in those steps where they're reflecting on what work they did, what could go better next time. There were some really great suggestions in the chat as well about this. So I want to assign individual grades to my students. I want to make sure that I'm giving them credit where credit's due, even if the group project is kind of a disaster. Like Christine, for example, she did such hard work and tried to make up for everything. She's going to get a better grade, for example. This is where you choose your group set. So you can see that we have duplicated my final project group. That's weird. But you can see that I have my OTL final project groups, my week 2 discussions, week 1. This is where you can select a group. If you also want to just quick create a group set while you're in here, this is where you can create a new group category, and it's going to give you those same options for creating a group set that you got in the people area. So these are the 2 different places that you can create groups. Yes. Good. Something to note, if you require peer reviews, it's not one group reviewing another group's work. It would be individuals reviewing other individuals' work, I believe. Is that right, Karen? I feel like you had brought this up in the...
Yeah, I had emailed to find out how that works, and now I'm confused. So it was not what I wanted, and what I wanted was the individual reviews within a group.
Yes. Oh, that's right. That's what it was. Thank you for the reminder.
I don't know exactly what it is.
Yeah, so my understanding is that if you require peer reviews, it will take an individual from group A and have them review group B's work. It won't be...
Can you click on the checkbox a second? Yeah, and so, oh, nope, it's not there. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I thought there was a checkbox for within or across, allow across groups. To automatically assign peer.
Oh yeah, so allow intra-group peer reviews.
And so,
yeah.
Again, so I think what that checkbox makes me think it by default will give you, if I'm in group A, it will give me group B's work. But every member of group A will review either B, C, D, E, or F's.
Yeah. Okay.
But then if you allow intra-group, an A might get another A's.
Yes. Yep. Okay. That makes sense.
But it's a little confusing.
It is. Yeah. The peer review piece is confusing to me. So I'm sorry if I just like totally muddied the waters for everyone. If you want them doing peer reviews of other groups' work, something you might consider would be, creating a discussion board where you have each group post their project and then have people, review each other's group projects that way. If there are questions about peer review or you want to talk about peer review, please do reach out to us and we will make sure that the water's not so muddy, it's a little clearer. So again, you can assign this to everyone. You can also assign this to individual groups if you would like. So if I just want group project 2 to do this assignment for some reason, that is also an option. But I'm going to keep it with everyone. You have your due date, all of that fun stuff here at the bottom. So I'm just going to click, save and publish because I'm really confident I'm ready for students to be able to see this. And so, yes, this is, one moment. It's not showing me what I thought it was going to show me here. So student view. Okay. Sorry, it wasn't showing me the page. I thought it was going to show me here at the student view. But yes, so this is how you would have this project set up. One student would submit for all of the other students, and you could see that they could share their comments. So Ashley, your question is a quick answer. Yes, you can get a test course if you give us your access ID and just put maybe test course after it here in the chat. I'll go in and add test courses for whoever wants them after this. Yeah, gladly, Ashley. Okay, so Sarah, so the group submits one contract and plan. They negotiated it, but then the leader submits it. Yes. And then when the leader submits it, is that correct? I feel like I'm getting all confused about things. One person would have to submit, right? Karen? Keep leaning on Karen here.
That I don't know.
Okay, for group projects, let me look into that for you. I'll send that out.
Carly, I would just say from my experience in my graduate courses, we've had it where group leaders have been responsible for submitting that information. I don't know if that's explicitly a setting or just a recommendation, but that's been my personal experience.
Okay, all right, yeah. So I will answer that question in my follow-up email as well. Okay. One person submits and then manually add the grades to the group members. Okay. Yeah, it would be weird to have the same 3 or 4 people. I agree. Let me look into that from that aspect. That's one thing I'm not 100% sure on, and I don't want to give you the wrong answer on, Sarah. Okay. Okay, thank you. So usually one student submits, and that's, yes, where you want to have them give roles, and then part of the role of being the leader or whatever would be submitting. Yep, and then being able to grade the work more individually, yeah. All right, are there other questions? Oh, thank you so much, Cody. Yeah, the Canvas community is a really great place to find out how other people are using Canvas and what's working for them. And so Cody just put a peer review and group assignments discussion there. And I'll do some digging about these questions and give you some information about how these work too. So at the end of these slides, I just want to point out, if you have questions, please throw them in the chat while I'm chattering here. I have a list of instructor resources that are related to the pedagogy and technology. So if there are questions that you still have, or if you want to see kind of where I pulled this information from, or see what other people are saying, because there are, as with anything in pedagogy, different ideas about how things are done, and these are just, you know, my ideas and things that I pulled together from these different resources. So it's always helpful to reach out and see what else is out there. And then I also wanted to include a student resources piece of some quick links that you can share with your students. So one might be the Academic Success Center. They can do some counseling that will help them work through group projects. And then there's the Learn Anywhere website that has some different resources for students. And then there's some different guides. So the Canvas guides, I recommend whenever you're using different features in Canvas, sharing these step-by-step guides with your students as a way to help them through the technology piece, because we, as much as we can in this online environment, want to help ourselves overcome the technology challenges that can come up, and we want to make sure that our students are able to get past the technology and get right to thinking logically and thinking critically about their group project, and less about where do I find this thing in Canvas. There's Central Michigan has a really great, and Drexel both have some great tips that you can sort of pull together if you want to, make your own list of tips for students and kind of curate them, or just give them the links and let them explore on their own. Those are both options as well. This is by no means an exhaustive list. There's a ton of resources out there for students, but I think that these are a couple good ones that I really liked. I have about 6 minutes left. I can stick around if anyone has questions. Let me copy this link again. So here is the link to the slides, so that you can view them and you can download them and add notes, add your thoughts. Yes, yep. So the Vanderbilt link I also have here, that's here at the top. So using cooperative learning groups effectively. Yeah, thank you all for coming. Yeah, Nadia?
Yeah, Carl, the sprint course that we registered for, did it have anything about the group work, like examples or how it was included in the course or not? I just forgot the sprint.
I don't know off the top
The
of my
sprint design.
head
Oh,
if
okay,
the sprint, yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head whether the sprint.
okay, anyway, I can't
believe
find
so.
it anymore on the virtual hub.
Okay, I think we have here in the teacher resources, there's an OTL guide to online presentations, and there's some information about group projects there. And then, where did I put it?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. With that in mind, if you didn't do the virtual sprint, the course design sprint earlier, or you want to go back through and refresh your mind in a sort of new structure for this, looking at fall, we have 2 different sessions coming up, one that starts at the end of this month, one that starts in July. They're a little bit slower paced, not quite a sprint this time, so please keep your eye out for those as well. All right, thank you all so much.